Yes. Well, was listening to the podcast on Stuff to Blow Your Mind, and it was, I guess it was an old one. I don't remember the date, but as far as it discussed miasma theory and how that's the idea that the air can be ill or be the cause of a disease. And uh, through it all, there seems to be you know, the modern, as much as they tried to take a balanced tone, they still end up uh, being sort of ridiculing in a way of it. But um, I wanted to throw this into the mix that with the current, if I'm correct understanding, and I'm more than willing to hear other people out about it, but there's a current understanding in with bacteriology and virulence with quorum sensing. Now, that's where these bacteria that communicate with one another in a population by putting out uh, these um, signal molecules that some of them are, you know, conspecific and some of them are cross specific. So you have these the fluid that surrounds these animals full of these communication molecules, and when the gradient gets large enough for um, let's say cholera. I believe they even proved this with cholera, that it's really a matter of all of the bacterium taking a census, uh, and if the amount of those molecules is large enough, that a switch is turned on that turns on the virulence for that particular bacterium. So prior to that happening, you can have, you know, a certain number. Let's just pick randomly 10, but having 11 of them is enough for them to sense that they should turn on the genetics for virulence. Okay, so uh, that doesn't change that it's the animal, that creature or that thing that's actually responsible. No one's changing the germ idea. But getting back to the idea that um, miasma, which is the air. Now, air obviously was never the source of any of these problems. It was something that was contained in the air, whether you could smell it or not, some compound that would tell you that the air was bad or that it could be bad. And it's bad for a particular reason, let's say. And the reason is that, let's say, and this is where I'm, musing, those um, markers, those signaling markers, I'm not certain what their shelf life is, where they would degrade. Uh, so, so if they have a long shelf life, and if they last longer than even the gross deconning of the organism itself, so you get rid of the cholera bacteria, but you still have present these signaling markers that are left lying around, like memos, right? Now a new population comes in, and if they sense that there's these signaling markers, right, they're going to feel inaccurately that there isn't, um, that there's a larger population than there actually is. So you could fool a small population and think it has a large one because you have the signaling molecules have lasted. Now, secondary to that, if the signaling molecules are in a fluid and they're light enough that evaporation can cause them to be airborne, if, let's say, the population that's in your body, which or cutoff was 10, we said, but now you get more of those signaling molecules that triggers them to say, oh, well, somehow or other we've got more than 10, right? And that turns on the genetic switches for virulence. Then the air technically has caused the virulence because it's had the signaling molecules that were evaporated, and when you smelled them, the population that was on your body, which wasn't presently virulent, gets activated. Now, all of this is dependent on one, uh, how long do the signaling molecules last in a fluid? Do they, you know, denature, depolymerize, break down in some way, or digest it over time? They don't last. You know, what's their shelf life? And also, it's dependent on whether they can be aerosolized. So, to revisit the miasma theory again, then does that mean, because it's not, it is the airborne process that can cause it. Um, so I just thought that was an interesting thing to throw into the mix to discuss, and I thought the quorum sensing developments are interesting to always keep at the forefront, because they're very um, well. It seems to be fairly recent, and um, and a different way of looking at things that way. Uh, so, uh, could it even be um, that there are somehow in certain areas latent pockets that were, let's say, fossilized, like that is if these particular molecules lasted even a longer time, and so that if there was any sort of erosion that occurred in a particular area, and you had these signaling molecules become airborne due to erosion in the soil, um, would they set off, given any other change in circumstances, uh, the signal for that virulence? So, well, that was that on that lines.